Hello and welcome to the Indo GAA Podcast. I'm delighted to have a special guest for today. My old college lecturer back in my UL days, back in my teaching days, Cian O'Neill. How are you doing?
Morning, Michael. How are you, fella?
I'm all good, all good. We obviously know Cian from the sidelines with various teams and an unbelievable track record down through the years. He's also head of sport, leisure and childhood studies in MTU Cork. And Cian, I know there's a study going on at the minute that you have a real vested interest in, and you'll be one of the people giving feedback on it. It's a study by Emma Kent. It's a master's research project entitled An Investigation into the Health, Wellbeing and Perceived Stressors of Elite Level Gaelic Games Managers and Coaches. Plenty of stressors, as you know from your last 20 years been involved with various teams. Just talk me through kind of the various things and what you're hoping to come to light from this investigation.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It's great to get the opportunity to speak a little bit about this today because we've only just launched this research study. We're very fortunate that this has been endorsed by the GAA HQ. So Shane Flanagan from Coaching and Games Development took a particular interest in this because of the role the GAA have in not just supporting players, but also supporting managers, coaches, referees, administrators. And then Tom Parson and his team at the GPA also took an interest in this too, because I think the figure is somewhere around the 90% plus of intercounty managers, more so than coaches, are ex-players, so would all be GPA members as well. And I just felt over the years, having been involved in this space myself, I suppose through all the levels, through an athletic development coach, to a football coach, to a manager, that there are a lot of challenges, difficulties, stressors, really great days, but really dark times as well. And I just don't think, through no one's fault as an organization, or even from the university side of things, we've actually captured that or quantified it, or even delved a little bit deeper into it to see, what is the extent of these challenges that managers and coaches are being placed under, and indeed what supports are out there, whether that be from the GAA itself, from the GPA, or even county boards themselves. And of course, this isn't just about the county game. This extends to the club game as well. But we just felt, myself, Emma, who's the postgraduate researcher, Dr. Con Burns and Dr. Andrea Bickerdike, that's the supervisory team, that we felt this was a great time to explore this. There's been a lot of research done in the past in other sports, in other countries, primarily looking at the professional game. And a lot of that is focused on job security and job insecurity, and then obviously the pressures that can put on. But very few people outside of Ireland would realise that, yes, the GAA at elite level is amateur. It very much is a professional industry when you're involved at the top level. So that's where this came about. And obviously I'm an inside researcher of sorts, but I'm just a supervisor. Emma herself will be the person driving this, and we're just there to guide and to mentor her along the way.
As you say, there are some great days in GAA, but nothing will make you feel down more than the GAA as well at times when results go against you. And you know that, obviously, Cian, from your own kind of career, particularly probably the management side of things. Like even when you look back at, let's say, the Leinster semi-final against Westmeath or the quarter-final defeat to Carlow, talk to me about your reaction, we'll say, to those dark days and what supports, if any, were available to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I do think I mentioned the three roles that I had, I have gone through in the last 20 years in intercounty management, from kind of athletic development coach into manager. There's no doubt almost that the level of pressure increases relative to the role because of the level of involvement you have on a more holistic level. So as an S&C coach, generally you're not a selector, so you're not involved in team selection. You tend to have closer relationships with players because you're not involved in selection. But then if you're a coach, generally you are, not always, but generally you are a selector. You're more to the forefront, and you're supporting the manager in all that he and she wishes to do with the team. And then when you're the manager, the buck stops with you. So I do think throughout those three roles that I've been involved in, there's no question the level of pressure, stress, it really escalates when you get to the role of manager. And I think there's lots we could do to support managers in that regard. But I suppose the Kildare experience is what you're referring to there, Michael. When I went into management back in 2016, obviously at intercounty level, it was new. I'd been managing clubs, managing Sigerson teams and UL, that type of thing. But nothing prepares you for the level of intrusion and the escalation and pressure and stress that can come with that role. And I think every manager in the country will attest to that. But it really does hit you on a personal level because you literally are responsible not just for that group of players, but you're also responsible for the management team, for the backroom team. You're answerable in many ways to the supporters because you're the person in front of the microphone, and the county board who have put so much trust and faith in you. So, like, that's a lot to have on one single person, i.e., the manager, particularly when in most cases it's not their full-time role. They still have a day job or they still have a family and they might have other interests going on in life. So those 2 days in particular, the Westmeath defeat in the Leinster semi-final, that was my first year. And I suppose that was coming off the back of being in 6 of the previous 7 All-Irelands between football and hurling. And then not managing to take your own county, where you're from, where you grew up, where your family still live, to a Leinster final. Westmeath would have been seeded higher than us because Kildare dropped from 1 to 2 to 3 before I come in. But we still would have had expectations to get back to a Leinster final. So that really hit me hard. And that sense of failure, of not meeting the expectation of players, of fans, of the county board. Yeah, that was really difficult to take. And it probably was my first major kind of dent in confidence, self-belief, trust in my own ability. So I had to learn a lot from that pretty fast.
How does that manifest itself? Like the effects of, say, a defeat like that? Are you staying inside for a week afterwards? Are you second guessing even some things you're doing, etc.?
Yeah, all of that. Not sleeping, not eating. Like, I remember that time quite vividly, because I actually didn't feel well in myself at all. I didn't leave the house, number one. Physically did not leave the house until the Tuesday or Wednesday night when we went back training as a team. And I suppose at that stage I was recently married. My wife happens to be a psychotherapist, so there was some
Oh,
professional help
beautiful.
within the house, but maybe that's why you never go to someone who you know to treat you, because that probably caused more tension. Poor Tammy in that regard. But no, she was very helpful trying to do the right thing. But you know yourself, when you're in that bubble, when you were playing with Offaly, I don't think you trust much of what other people say unless they're in the same bubble as you, rightly or wrongly. And I think it was only when I arrived into St. Conleth's Park that next session and all the players and management were there together, that's when you started to feel a little bit better again. And that's not a healthy thing because no one knows what's gone on in the previous 3, 4, 5 days from a health and well-being perspective.
What supports would you like to see, we'll say, around managers? Like, barring your management team, the people you have around you that you've hopefully chosen to have around you, the county board, your friends, your circle of friends and your family, like, what other supports can there be or should there be in place, do you think, to support managers, coaches?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult one. Once again, we come back to the whole amateur organisation side of things, and like the GAA as an organisation do phenomenal work from grassroots right up to intercounty level. As do, by the way, the LGFA and the Camogie Association. And it is our hope after their first study to focus on the men's game, Michael, that we do want to move it into Camogie and ladies football as well. But we have to start somewhere. But I do think when you look at the great initiatives that have been there to support players, the GPA have been at the forefront of that. There's some really nice work done in the last couple of years. You might have seen Noel Brick's work up in University of Ulster with referees and the stress and the abuse that they have to put up with. I'd like to see some coherent, structured supports for intercounty managers and coaches, at a management level in the organisation, so that all they can do is make it available, similar to what the GPA do for the players. And perhaps the GPA have a role in here today where it could be basically a co-created process. Because, as I said, many managers and coaches are ex-players, whereby they come together and try and provide similar supports for intercounty managers and coaches. And then it's up to the individual whether they want to avail of them or not.
Yeah.
But at least for them to know that the organisation is there to support you. I think that would be really helpful because, there has been a lot of tension over the years between administration and management, whether it's got to do with fixtures or, burnout or whatever the case may be. I think when it comes to health and well-being, every one of us needs to be on the same page for the sustained health and well-being of managers and coaches.
Is it a coincidence, Cian, that you haven't had a manager's role since Kildare? Do you enjoy not being in the backroom because you're still at the forefront, but do you enjoy maybe having maybe less pressure? And like you love coaching, that's like what you've always loved. Like, are you happier in that kind of environment? And I presume it's no coincidence as well that, like, when you're Kildare manager, you have to do media, you have to talk. You're talking after every game, you're talking before every game sometimes. Have you enjoyed just doing what you love most now, as aside from all that other stuff that comes with management?
Yeah, well, I think there's slightly different things. I love coaching first and foremost. And you know this, we know each other a long time. Coaching is my passion. Like, I love being on the pitch with the players, with the rest of the coaching team, the back room. When people say, why do you do it? It always comes back to me, to connection, relationships, enjoyment of being on that level with players, managers, coaches, physios, psychologists, whatever the case may be. And I really do enjoy that. I really enjoyed the management side of it too. I just think it's different. You have less time with the players, because there's so many other roles, in management. I didn't particularly enjoy, the media side of things. It has to be done. It's a critical part of it, but I didn't enjoy how, sometimes things were taken out of context accidentally or purposefully, or how no matter what you say one thing one week and it's picked up a certain way. Okay, you go against that the next week, it's picked up a certain way, and you're saying, okay, what do I say here? So I have enjoyed keeping away from all of that since I left Kildare in 19. And there's a critical role for it, but it's just my preference. But the management thing is not something I'd never go back into it. I've just been very fortunate, like, to work with Cork and Ronan McCarthy when I live here, to work in Galway with Porrick and the group, to come back into Kerry then after all those years. Like, I just love the connection and the relationship piece. That's it more than anything. It's not necessarily the role. I'd probably take any role just to stay connected,
You mentioned about the connections. I was chatting to Paul Curran during the summer there, just doing a profile around yourself, and like, you still meet up with the Tipperary lads from Liam Sheedy's time there. Like, that's a big thing. That's 15 years since he won the All-Ireland, and I presume it's probably a similar case with other counties you've been with.
Yeah, that group are particularly good at that type of stuff. They were a brilliant group of players, brilliant team, brilliantly managed by Liam, who kept us all so involved. We're actually heading out to Marbella in a few weeks' time. Just thought I'd throw that in there, Michael. That's our 15-year anniversary trip. So the lads organise this themselves, and normally it could be Cork or Kilkenny or Galway or whatever, but we always do meet up every November for a night or 2 nights. And I think the lads just got a bit excited this year with Tip winning the All Ireland, so they said let's go big or go home,
Yeah, and just on that, like, that's a lot of connections. I even know from your time in UL. You love being in UL as well. You're keeping contact with everyone nearly where you've been.
Yeah, and that's the connection piece. Like, I really try my hardest. One of the biggest challenges I've had since going into management in my day job is, because you're not in the classroom or in the lab or in the sports hall with the likes of you and the lads back in the day. Like, you do miss that connection in my day job. Back then, you'd walk down the corridor, you'd know everyone's name, you'd know what sport they played or what activity they did, where they're from, what county. As soon as you move into a different role in your day job, you lose that, and I really do miss that. So I get that connection piece then from being involved in sport, being involved in different charity organizations. I sit on the board of directors with the Cork Sports Partnership. You make so many connections there as well. And if I didn't have that, like, I really would struggle. The one thing I haven't given enough to is the GAA club in MTU where I work, for the simple reason that the GAA is all consuming. But it is my mission as soon as I step down, if the club will have me, I'd love to work with a fresher team and just work with them throughout the 4 years and develop a relationship there. I haven't been able to do that in the 12 years I'm here, which is really disappointing. But I will stay involved whenever I do finish up with Intercounty. There's no doubt about that,
Just on the Intercounty as well, 2026 will be your 21st consecutive season. Like, that is mad in a lot of ways, because, like, the vast majority of people need breaks. I know that you came in with Cork probably late in the day, so you had a long enough break, but like, a break for you is like 3 or 4 months, like not not a year. Like 21 seasons at elite inter-county level, starting off with Limerick, with Mickey Ned back in the day, and even remember you taking sessions in Pitch 1 in UL and going all the way up to Kerry now and going into next year. It's been a crazy kind of journey.
It has. It has. It's been amazing as well. I mean, Jesus, to think you're going into your 21st season now. I really have tried hard for the purpose of my relationship with my wife to step away. Like when I stepped away from Kildare, I was 100% taking a clean break. COVID came, Ronan McCarthy was changing his backroom. What people won't know is 200 meters outside this window here is the MTU Stadium. That's where Cork trained. And I was kind of pulled back in then for 2 years with Cork because it was literally 200-meter walk from my office, you know.
And that hasn't been the norm for other jobs you've been with, the likes of
No,
Mayo and that.
and that's the thing. And we didn't have a family at the time when the Galway thing came with Porrick, and that kind of escalated. That was a 2 year gig. But by the end of the second year, we just had our first and only child, Luca. And like I was fully committed. I promised at home to step away, just to spend more time because it's not the coaching. And I don't know if people understand this fully unless you're on the road for a job. Coaching, I find, is the easy part. The writing session plans, the video analysis, the working with players and management. It's actually the travel. The travel is the killer. So I would leave here and work in Bishopstown, 2:30, 3, and I wouldn't get home till 1 a.m., from Galway on some nights. And then you're up the next morning and work for 7, 7:30. And it's once Luca came along, you might see him that morning at 7, 7:30, but not see him until the next morning because he's in bed when you get home. And that was the tricky piece. So staying on with Galway for the extra year was a challenge at home, but I think we just felt there was something special in the group there that everyone stayed on. But after the 3 years, he was becoming two, and I couldn't have done it. So that's when I stepped away. I did, and I was happy. And it was just the Kerry thing, when Paddy Tally left, and Jack had rang me. The fact it was only an hour down the road, and that we'd been there together before, and Tammy really enjoyed the Kerry community when we were there before. That made it a bit easier to dip my toes back in, if that makes sense.
You said you never would have left Kerry originally, other than if the Kildare job came up, which it did.
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of ties back into the management thing. Like I had no interest or aspirations. Like, oh, I want to get into management. The management is where you need to be. It's just that it was my home county. Train out in Newbridge, which is where I'm from. My dad have two brothers still up there. I have two siblings who live abroad. And the fact that it is your own county, we were still trying to have a family, Tammy and I. And I always felt when that came was when I would stop. So I just felt if this opportunity didn't present itself, it may never present itself again. But no, like the Kerry setup and Eamon as manager, he was phenomenal. The management team, like we had a really great thing going. It was really tearing me apart to make that decision, but just from the family side of things, getting back to Kildare for a once-off opportunity, that was the only reason I took it, to be honest.
Yeah. And when Jack asked you to get back involved again, that was obviously something you kind of probably jumped at as well. And I'm even thinking like the opportunity to coach. I know you don't like to pick out individual players, but the opportunity to coach David Clifford, Paddy, etc. Like that's just nearly impossible to turn down.
No, 100%. And listen, the allure Kerry number one, they do so many things so well. I mean, I just think as an organization, they're phenomenal. The supporters are so passionate. It's everything that it should be, in terms of the county board, the players, the community. It's a really great place to work. But I suppose the big challenge for me was I promised at home that was it done.
How are you getting away with this?
I don't want to say too much. It could self-incriminate me. Yeah, I know. To be fair, like Tammy's from a music background. She's a singer by trade. She's no interest in sport, but has become very interested in wherever I go. And without that support, I think everyone would agree to this. Without that support, you just couldn't do it. Um, and I think if it was any other role, it would have been no. You promised. It was just we already had a connection there. And Killarney, especially with the Macroom bypass, it literally is an hour.
Okay.
There's no more travel than that. That was probably it, really. But if anything else came up and this is over, it'll definitely be a no. I just got to be I got to be home more. But Luca goes to matches and he enjoys it. He wears the jersey, and like there's some nice memories there for us as well. But I think if we're being really honest, it is quite a selfish thing. Playing and management, I think it is quite selfish because for the duration of the season, priorities do shift, especially when it comes to championship. And we're probably all telling lies if we don't say that's the case. We are inherently selfish in many ways.
There's kind of no way around that. Because if you're doing it like you are doing it, gung ho, full bore, there is no back step, and you kind of, it is a selfish discipline. There's no point in saying any different.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why you need the support. Because if you don't have the support, I think it'll just breed frustration, envy, apathy, and ultimately, I'm sure, like thankfully, we're in a really good space, but I'm sure it's had a detrimental impact on many relationships. Whether that's early stage relationships as a player, where you're missing weddings or 21sts or 30ths or engagements, or when you're a little bit older, like us in management, and it could be family events or whatnot. Like I missed my own sister's wedding
Okay.
because a fixture was changed, and I was up in Tyrone with Kerry, and I missed my own
How
sister.
did that go down?
Yeah, yeah, not very well, not very well, but that's the selfish part of it. But you do really strive to make it up in your own way whenever you can. And whether that's early mornings before you go to work because you may not see the wee fella in the evening, or trying to make sure you're supporting your wife or your partner or your husband, whenever you can, and especially the off season. Like I put in a massive effort that I should be doing all the time as soon as the All Ireland was over, because that's what I had to do. That was the right thing to do. But it's not sustainable. And when this end, it will be the end for me, so I can be a proper family man.
Does the shorter season help in that regard? Like it's not starting in November and finishing at the end of September, shall we say? I know it has its demands as well.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And that's an interesting part with this study, though, this research, because it definitely helps, especially if you're not working with anyone else. Like I used to go back to my own club, Moorfield in Newbridge, at the end of every county season and just help out where I can if they ever wanted me. And I loved it, but you just can't do that, repeatedly over time. So now I do absolutely nothing, and it's badly needed. The shorter season is better for that. But I think it ramps up the pressure and the intensity within the season. And I think anyone who's been involved pre and currently within the short season, I think everyone will agree. Like the pressure points are greater, but it is nice to have the off season at the same time. It is nice, yeah.
When you look back at 2025, Keane, it was a fair roller coaster of a season in the sense that you had your setbacks throughout the year. Everybody was learning how to utilise new rules, etc. Just talk me through 2025, and ultimately it must have been unbelievably satisfying to do what you did, and in the wind up, save your best performance probably until the biggest occasion of the year.
Yeah, it was. It was a phenomenal season. That was non-linear in many ways. I mean, it certainly wasn't. We started here, and it was just a linear trajectory the whole way through. We hit lots of speed bumps along the way, and as a management and a group of players, we just had to find a way and make sure that we stayed aligned and stayed connected, and learned from some of the issues, whether there were some defeats in the league that we felt, we should have at least grabbed a draw or even won. The Dublin game would be one that springs to mind, the Mayo game that really put us in a precarious position going into the last two matches, which were Armagh and Galway, which were phenomenal victories because they're two top teams. And all of a sudden you end up in a league final when people thought you were staring down the face of relegation, which we were. So that was pretty stressful, to be fair, because relegation doesn't sit well in any county, but particularly in Kerry. Um, and then the championship, obviously, we had a close call against Cork in the semi-final of Munster. Regrouped well, and then obviously hit a major speed bump against Meath, where a lot of introspection happened after that match, where we just had to really assess where we were, and very difficult to put our finger on anything. So we just said we'd focus on what we've always done, which is fixing things, having a good mentality, working hard in practice and in training, and the players were brilliant in that regard. I felt after that match, the players really took control and drove things on. There's some phenomenal leaders in that squad, Michael, and obviously our job is to support them, facilitate them. Um, but if they're not willing to come, well, then there's a disconnect there. But the players should take full credit for what they did from that Meath match on.
Was that the type of scenario where the players were taking the bull by the horns? They were being guided and led, but it's not like, the manager trying to spoon feed people. Was it did the players take the bull by the horns and say that we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to address whatever we need to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a co-creation element to it, really, isn't there? Whereby, like, we have our job and they have their job, but if either of us are dropping in any department, well, then everything drops, So we upped our game in terms of, that support element, whether that's our own analysis, opposition analysis, the coaching element on the pitch. I mean, you won't get anyone more experienced than Jack O'Connor, when it comes to that stage of the season, and Jack managed that whole process brilliantly. So he did. But the players also realized that what has happened in previous years can't happen again, because, I mean, ultimately, if things didn't go well or the way that we planned this year, like, it would have been, with the exception of 2014 was the last time Kerry won an All-Ireland. And before that then was 2009. So for a group of players of the quality that's there, they didn't want to accept that themselves. Like, there's a generational talent in that group. So I think they realized that. Not that they didn't always, but sometimes it takes a defeat to really start a reset. And you could just sense it in meetings and sessions. They just took their game, but they also drove our standards in the management to a new level as well. It was incredible to be part of that journey with them.
Paddy famously said that the Kerry supporters were like effing animals. I'm wondering what was the damage like after the Meath game. I'd say you were happy maybe not to be living down in Kerry and just dipping in and out when you were. But and even like Darragh O'Shea's comments in the media, etc. The pressure was fairly ratcheted up.
It was, and rightly so, by the way, as well, in terms of pressure. Like, I think anyone can handle pressure, as long as you have a good support structure around you. I think is when things get nasty, when things get personal, that's not pressure. That's actually almost an assassination attempt on characters of, be it managers or managements or players. And I think that's where the line is crossed. I mean, in any match I've ever lost where we really didn't hit the standards we set, I would expect and would embrace whatever that feedback is, but when things really get to a point where it's getting personal, that's what I don't like. And funnily enough, in the first phase of the survey instrument that we're sending out to every intercounty manager and head coach, there is a question on, are you native to the county you're managing or coaching in? And then the follow-on question is, do you live in the county that you are currently managing, coaching in? Because I do think, and I'm only hypothesizing now, but I do think that level of stress can be greater. Number one, if it is your own county, I certainly felt that in Kildare, but I didn't live there. I was living in Cork, so I was able to exit the county until the next session and come back, and then go back to Cork and back to Kildare. But if you live there as well, it has to be all consuming. So the reason that those particular questions are in there is to see, is there a direct analysis or a correlation between managers who live and work and are from their own county and their perceived stress levels, and those who are not from the county? Is there a subtle difference, or is stress just generic and global, And Jack lives in Kerry and he's coached Kerry. This is his third stint. He's now a 5-time All-Ireland winner manager. But there's no question that he would have been hurt. And there's no question that would have had an impact on him. And he's spoken about that as well. And I think that's the part that's unacceptable. Societally and globally, the personalized, nasty, personal nature of it. We can all deal with criticism. Like, we're our own biggest critics. I think anyone involved in the game, no one will get deeper or heavier than a video analysis session of an absolutely catastrophic performance. No one will go deeper than us. So we don't need to be told that you're rubbish or crap or you're too old or you're too young or you're not good enough,
I think it's kind of natural, if you're living in an area, even like chat to club managers and that, if they're native to the club that they're managing and they're living there, when things are going great, you're brilliant, like, and there's lads slapping in the back or whatever. When things aren't going great, you're nearly walking down the street with your eyes down, you're nearly hoping you're not going to meet someone. Yeah, it's gas. This is not reality, but this is what people think. You think everybody's talking about you, and they're not. But that's totally. I've been injured more than my fair share, and you walk into training injured, and you're kind of your head down, and you think everybody's saying, "What's this lad doing coming in?" Nobody is thinking about you. Most people are just thinking about themselves. But that's kind of the way it is.
Yeah. And isn't it funny you mentioned the club game there? Because I'd love for this research eventually to move from the inter-county level across all disciplines down to the club. In many ways, it could be worse at club level.
Yeah.
Because a town or a village or a parish is much smaller than a county. So therefore, like what you just said, you might just go to the pub in your own town or village and you feel that everyone is talking about you after a poor performance. So, I mean, this impacts everyone. I just think it's magnified to a greater level at the elite inter-county level at the moment, because everyone has an opinion now on social media. And, there may be just more intense scrutiny on the county game than the club game. But I would say it feels to those club managers and coaches equally as painful. I worked in the club game for years as well. So defeats are equally as painful at that level as they are at inter-county level. It doesn't discern between what level you're at,
Or they're as bad, if not worse, because you feel like you're Johnny down the corner. That's who you're after, kind of feel like you're after letting down, even though that's not the case, but that's what you think. Just quickly, Cian, as a coach, and I know you're not going to take all the credit because all the different coaching that goes on is shared, and it's obviously Jack's vision as well. But how satisfying is, we'll say, that third quarter against Armagh, where it's like, oh my God, everything we've been working on is just coming to fruition here.
That's the magic part. I think any coach will tell you that, or manager. It's when you see the follow through of things you've been working on the training pitch, on the practice field, when they translate into performance, when it really, really matters, that is the holy grail, And I think sometimes you can lose matches, but really play well as you had planned, but you lost for whatever reason you did, and still be satisfied because you can see progress. But when you nail the performance piece and get the victory, that's a very, very special place to be, And I think we're very lucky because the way we coach, myself and the rest of the coaching team, we coach by principles of play. There's no instruction in terms of how we coach. And I'm saying this because this is where the players take the credit. We discuss principles of play, we discuss scenarios, but they're never told you go there. When you go there, he goes there, and then you come across there. There's no mechanical element to how we play. So anytime you see players respond like that, it's full credit to them because they've just been given the tools or the weapons, but ultimately they decide how they're going to use them. So that's why I think the players need to take all the credit there, because they chose those tools. They chose when they're going to press, when they're not. They were coached how to, but they'll decide when, and they'll decide if they see something that we never worked on, they'll go back to their principles rather than, we never did this exactly that way. They'll just find a way. And that's full compliment to all the players on the squad.
Is David Clifford's point before half-time in the All-Ireland final something like that? I'm sure he worked on scenarios like that, but he and a couple of other lads obviously took the bull by the horns to do what they actually did. Like that was phenomenal. And I can't imagine the oxygen coursing through lads' veins when he got into the dressing room at half-time after something like that.
Oh, absolutely. I thought the patience that they showed there, because after about 30 seconds you could hear the crowd getting frustrated. But that wasn't the Kerry crowd. That was the Donegal crowd, because for whatever reason they weren't pressing out. So, I mean, the lads were very conscious of the clock. They were very conscious of the score, and they were very conscious of the hooter. And it's actually one thing we always, I love when we're doing video and we have TV footage, because when you're looking at your film, in the corner, you'll always see the score and the clock. And I think that has a huge relevance of what the next play or the next phase of play should be. So I was so happy for the players that they recognized that, we've got another 2 minutes here, but they didn't rush or panic, or, they stuck to what they had been working on in practice. And who else do you want on the ball when the hooter is just gone, than David? And I think if you look at the camera, one of the fans in the crowd, I'm sure you've seen that camera angle where
it's brilliant. Yeah.
Just focused on David. It reminded me on that documentary on Zidane years ago, where the cameras for a full match only followed him. You couldn't see the goals, you couldn't see anything bar him. And it was a real eye-opener for me as a coach in terms of how he scanned, in particular, his verbal and his non-verbal gestures. That to me was David that day, how he looked so disinterested. Then when the hooter went, McCall thought he was going to catch it on the loop because a lot of David's movement patterns are on the loop because he's such a good kicker. But he actually cut across McCall, whereas he was expecting him to go around him. He cut across him, and that's what brought him the 3 or 4 meters to actually pull the trigger. And that's just quality. That's quality from the players.
With a player of that quality, are you just guiding them a small bit and letting him kind of do his thing to some extent as well?
Oh, absolutely. And listening. Like, they'll tell you what they're seeing, whether that's before a match, whether they played them last year or at halftime. And all you're trying to do, and that's where it comes back to principles, you're not telling them what to do. You're telling them what might work, what may not work, the interaction between 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. But ultimately, they will decide in the moment what they feel is the best thing to do. So, oh yeah, you do a lot of listening when you're coaching players at the top level, as opposed to telling or talking.
As a fella who's gorges on principles of play and watching teams for over the years, I'd imagine when the new rules came in, you were like, lovely, let me get my teeth stuck into this. How did you find the coaching process, and how do you find the game in 2025 and beyond, we'll say, to the game 2024 and before then?
Oh, it's a different world. But I think both from listening to the players from their perspective, but also from a coaching perspective. I think you have so much scope in attack now to coach, but you have a huge amount of challenge defensively for the inverse reason as to why you have so much scope in attack. I love it. I think full credit to that whole group led by Jim and Eamon and James and Cullen and the rest of the gang. I think they've transformed the game for the greater good for decades into the future. I really feel that strong about it. And I know people will have tweaks here and there. But I mean, it has to work for county and club, doesn't it? And I just relished the chance of getting onto the pitch. I know it sounds a bit repetitive, Michael, but we didn't go straight into a micro focus on the new rules when we started, because I didn't think that was the right thing to do. We all had a chat about, let's just stick to our coaching process. And
that was obvious, Cian, from your games, though, to some extent. Like, you weren't going for a heap of 2-pointers or anything like that. It was like, I think that, that's the first time I've really heard that, but it looked like a conscious decision to, we're not going to go after this yet. We're going to let it kind of play out a bit more.
Yeah, I think we scored more goals than 2-pointers in the league, because we just wanted to, like, the players played the game as they saw it, and rarely did we, I don't know, was there one match, maybe the final, where we won the 2-point battle, where we scored more than our opposition. We know we just focused on the principles of play, and we tried to play to the strengths of the players, no matter what the opposition threw at us. And then as the season went on, we were all figuring it out week on week. Whenever we had the opportunity to spend more time together, like a training camp, they were invaluable to really delve deeper into, right, where's the next level to our game. But no, we certainly didn't focus on them for fear that you might over focus. And sure, the rules changed at the end of the league regardless, which was expected. So I was kind of happy that we all agreed, management and players, that this is the best way forward. It was a co-creative process. It wasn't any one person or any one thing.
Do you expect the level of coaching to the new rules to go to new levels over the coming years when people get used to it and see maybe little things they can exploit here and there? We probably didn't see, say, for example, the attack and mark. We saw very little of that this year. I'm sure there will be different things, different facets of the game that coaches and managers will really go after in the coming years.
Yeah, I think you'll even see a massive change this year, with teams learning from each other as well as learning from themselves. I suppose the one cautionary note I would say is that you can't copy and paste what other teams or other counties are doing, or club or whatever. I mean, there might have been a style of play that we looked at or a tactical ploy, but we would have had a really strong rationale behind that, whatever facet of our game that might refer to. You can't just copy that unless you know exactly the why behind the what. So it happened for years, like with the mass defense, and after Donegal's victory in 2012, clubs were doing that, but it totally changed how they played the game. I thought it was a real error. So I think the big thing for clubs and counties is to find out what works for you and your group of players. I think that's where the greatest success is, and that's what makes us all different. And the rules allow you to do that. The rules allow you to choose what type of team are you, and it's up to coaches and managers to find the best way of playing for their team.
Is that one of the biggest mistakes that's made in coaching? That we see something being successful for this team and we try to mirror it, but at the end of the day, say like, many teams try to mirror what Limerick were doing in hurling. Limerick can do that better than anybody else because it's been repped over and over again, and it suits the players that they have available to them. Whereas you would see a lot maybe at club level where you're trying to play a style, but you haven't really cut your cloth to measure what you actually have.
Yeah, I think so. It's one of the two big things I would see, because it has to work for you. Like it comes back to that term copy and paste. Just because it works for one doesn't mean it'll work for another. No more than there's a reason defenders are defenders, attackers are attackers, goalkeepers are goalkeepers, and midfielders are that. It's because that's what you're good at. That's what makes me different to the next person. And then you extend that out to a team. I think there'll be a lot of thought going on at the moment in intercounty and club setups about who are we and what's our point of difference. It's probably the best way to put it between us and them. And I suppose the other thing is what worked this year, because everyone else is working so hard to be more competitive next year, that may not work next year.
Yeah.
So then within the same group, they may need to change how they play, how they plan, how they set up as well, I think that is a major one. And the other one then is just a lack of representative, kind of authentic coaching in practice, whereby people aren't practicing how they want to play. So there's no representative learning design in how they create a session. I think if that's not there, it's very difficult for players to get an authentic feeling of how they should play in a match.
Go into that a bit more, Cian.
Well, for example, if you're coaching through drills, as an example, or you're practicing kickouts, but just from 1 to 9, and you're not bringing in the half forward or the full forward line, that's not representative of what you're going to be, forced to adapt to in a match. So for me, unless you have a representative learning design to the different aspects of your session, to make them authentic, when players get into a match, they're going to be meeting situations and scenarios that they've never actually faced before, So a lot of thought has to go into the planning to make sure that the why behind the what is there for every part of the session. And just because you've got these flashy drills that everything looks amazing at top speed, left hand, right hand, but there's no defenders, or there's no outcome at the end of it that results in a score, or that you're doing all these tackling boxes and tackling drills. But then when you move into a scenario where there's loads of moving parts, you've never faced that before. I do think that's the one thing we really focus on in our coaching modules here in MTU. Like we have a sport and exercise management program, coaching science, sports pedagogy program, and a recreation and leisure management program. Every one of them have coaching modules, but we try and coach across every program exactly the same, using the principles that as a coaching team we all agree. And I can see younger coaches now far superior than maybe the coaches we were producing. I started lecturing in 2020, 25 years ago, because we're better as well and we've learned more, So I do think that is the new change in coaching practice that's going out there. We have a new MSc. We talked about it yesterday. It's an MSc in skill acquisition for sport. And we've got phenomenal lectures on it. They call in Alan Dunton, Sam German. And it's all based on the theory of skill acquisition, session design, practice design, reviewing practice and planning for matches. It's been a phenomenal success, Michael. We've got students on that course. It's only 4 weeks in existence. USA, Canada, Australia, Singapore, interest from the NFL, NBA, MLS. It's phenomenal because there's an appetite out there for how do I take my coaching practice to the next level. And we're the only MSc in the world in skill acquisition. So we're getting people from countries all over, and we're learning as much from them as they are from us, because I don't know a whole lot about cricket in India. I really don't. But we have a coach, who's in the professional game on the program, or from Aussie Rules or Rugby League or baseball. It's phenomenal, the melting pot of learning there. And I think that's the next progression for coaches, not just in Ireland and the GAA, but globally,
Just on that course, Cian, that's for coaches that are working professionally, am I right in saying?
Well, not professionally, no, not at all. Like we have We actually have a graduate from our program last year who's only 1 year coaching. He's coaching with a club hockey team in Cork. But it's for people who are currently coaching because everything is based on their current experiences. So for assessments, they're recording their coaching practice and sessions. And then we're analyzing them together online, so they're mic'd up and they have cameras so we can hear the audio, we can see the visual. We're using software from Coach Logic. It's a British-based company, two colleagues up in Scotland. It's a phenomenal platform, Mark Cairns and Andy Muir, and they have a new level of that platform where we can really get into the qualitative part of the software where we're stopping, putting instructions in, asking questions. So even though our students, there's probably only 6 in Ireland, the other 19 are international students, we're all connecting, through this Coach Logic platform, and it's phenomenal to be able to do that. We probably learned a lot as a planet through COVID. So the lads have developed this technology because you don't need to be in a room all the time to develop coaching practice. So yeah, so I'd recommend anyone who's an interest in that space to have a look at that program if you're currently coaching. We only take 25 students in. We were 10 times oversubscribed this year.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll have similar interest next year and into the future.
Cian, you've been brilliant with your time. Just a couple of quick rapid fire ones before I let you go. Am I right in saying, despite your schedule, that you're not a coffee man?
No, I don't drink tea or coffee. I don't drink hot drinks. I think hot drinks are weird. I love cold drinks.
Give me the rationale behind that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I have lots of weird little things going on in my head, but yeah, I've never drank tea or coffee. Not a big fan of soup. I like things that are ice cold, not even cold, ice cold. But I'm a big fan of caffeine gum. If I open my drawer, I have bags of this stuff in there, and that's what keeps me going during the day.
Good man. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember you saying to me in an interview before that people are afraid of what they don't know. Do you think in any way that you're a bit misunderstood? Like some people think of Cian O'Neill and like it's mad. They just think of like occlusion goggles or something like that. And do you wish you'd never pulled them out in the first place?
No, absolutely not. I remember those days. By the way, they're still used globally. They're used in the NBA. They're used in Irish hockey. And do you know what? We were doing a brilliant it was actually a PhD with Alan Dunton, who's now a lecturer in the department and now is a core lecturer on that MSc program. And it was part of his PhD research. It was a company based out of Kerry, CU Sports, because they're called chin-up goggles. And there's strong validity with them. What I was trying to do when I was using them was just to expose players to different stimuli, as to think a bit differently. The reason I was looking at them in Gaelic games was if the ball is coming at you at speed, low on the ground, and then someone's coming in to kick it or to contact you, that you can maintain focus on the ball, because the purpose of the goggles is the closer they get to you, you can't see them anymore. So you're anticipating where the ball is going to be. I think the funny thing there is they might have been used 3 times for 15 minutes in a full season, but you have a few heroes there who like to make stories out of things. That's what that was. But it was great to support an Irish company as well. And the goggles do work. But no, I do think, sometimes people don't like how you talk, they don't like, how you look, they don't like whatever they don't like. But all you can do is be who you are. The only thing I really care about is what my family think, my wife and child think, my colleagues in work, obviously players and management. That's it. The rest of it's just noise, really, isn't it?
Yeah. And lastly, you were obviously the hunter this year with Kerry. You're the hunted now next year. Jack has this incredible record of
phenomenal.
But when a Northern team wins the All-Ireland the year before, Jack wins the league and the All-Ireland the year after. I think that's happened nearly every year throughout I think his 5 All-Irelands have all been that way. But you're the hunted now next year. So the boot is on a kind of a different foot, and you're going to have to come up with new things, and you're going to have to be different next year as well.
Yeah. I think you definitely will. I think if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. But that's if everything else stays the same. I think that every other county will be looking to see what they can do better. So if you think that you're okay where you are, you'll be caught standing still and you'll be passed out. So there's a lot of work to be done in the off season there for all of us. Um, and it's a fair point you made, you know. Very few teams can retain in All Ireland. Very, very few teams. So that's not something we're going to focus on, but it's a challenge that's out there and you can't deny the fact. So I don't think we'll change our philosophy in terms of actually, we won't change our philosophy and how we see the game being played because there's a reason it's called, you know, a philosophy and your principles of play are that. But I do think there'll be tactical innovations required because tacticals can change. They're movable feasts, really. But your principles shouldn't unless you have a core reason for that. So, yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting season. And I think the amount of work that'll be done by management teams, coaching teams, players, I think will be more than any other pre-season before because we've lived the new rules and people are seeing them at club level as well.
Yeah.
Like I'm learning things watching club games. I saw something on Sunday there. I was at 2 quarterfinals in Kerry and I learned one or two things watching those two matches that I just went, oh, Jesus, that's interesting. So you have to be continuously learning. I think that's really important.
Is every day a school day for you?
Yeah, it has to be. It has to be. And I suppose I'm lucky. My day job is in sports science, my multidisciplinary colleagues, like, there's coaches, there's physiologists, there's physios, there's doctors. There's so many different people, biomechanists, and I love learning from them. And a lot of them are coaches. Like we have a phenomenal group in the department here who coach as their hobby as well. Like Kevin Murray has only joined the Cork senior football team.
A hurling man.
Yeah, a great hurling man. All Ireland winner in '99. Sam German, who's on that MST team, is the strength conditioning coach for the Irish women's basketball team. And Ed and Alan are doing lots of consultancy work in the Skill Act space. Dan Horan would have worked with Roy Keane and Martin O'Neill with the Irish football team for years. And there's many more. Like there's so many people. So like conversations that we have every day, it's magical to have that as opposed to working in any other day job where maybe you wouldn't be exposed to that. So I'm very fortunate, that we have that environment around us,
Cian, you've been superb with your time. Thanks a million, and we'll check in again soon. No doubt we won't leave it as long.
No, Michael, if I can just say that email went out just in the last number of days to every county board secretary in the country. And I know the GAA is an amazing community when they see something that has worth and merit and value. And the request, just so people understand how the study is working, the request is that they send us on just the email addresses of every intercounty manager in the county senior, that is football and hurling, and the head coaches, because there may be more than one, in some counties. And then we're hoping once we have that we will send a survey instrument out to everyone in one big bang. So when we get the information in, we can start to analyze it as soon as possible. So I'd love to think we'll get a really positive response from county boards, but also the managers and the coaches themselves, because like any research project, the greater the database, the more inferences we can make from that, the more representative we can say that this was 90% of managers and coaches, which carries a lot more scientific value than if we 32% of them, So hopefully everyone will jump on board with that. It'll only take them 15 to 20 minutes. And then we'd love to scale that up to ladies football, to camogie. And I think this could be a really invaluable asset to the organization going forward to support managers and coaches, because we're already doing it for players. It's starting to happen for referees now, which is long overdue. So I just think this is the final piece of the puzzle if everyone can come on board, Yeah,
it's going to be fascinating research when it comes to light. Cian, great stuff, and enjoy the off season and treat the family over the coming months and get some credit in the bank for the year ahead. Thanks a million for your time.
Thanks, Michael. Slán.